Yeah, I am such a rule follower. I always do the same thing. So I'll be turning on and off, and I appreciate that. But thank you, George. As you said, I think for us today, the thing that I'm most excited and appreciative of is the panel of people sharing. So I'm very grateful that we have teachers from NYSAIS who have been teaching HLC courses to talk about and share their experience. Just as a quick context before I move to introducing them, I think for anyone who has joined, it is perhaps helpful to know that part of the reason this is a NYSAIS topic is that HLC has a partnership with NYSAIS where NYSAIS underwrites a portion of partnership costs for schools to be part of HLC. And so I think in many ways what you'll hear then, hopefully resonating, is not only conversations around HLC and teaching online and the experience of teaching online, but this interesting consistency and diversity too of NYSAIS schools and taking what is a close-knit community because of geography, yet very different experiences in very different schools. And sharing that kind of implementation. And that's something that HLC, that's part of why we started, is that we felt like online learning was certainly present in the conversation for schools, but maybe was not resonant with what we were hoping to have as various partner schools for the kind of learning and relationship building we wanted between student to student, student to teacher. And for us to be able to start this, grow this, and share it together really helps us stay focused on those kinds of best practices that really we feel better resonate who our campuses are. And also you'll hear, I think, examples of how and why classes are starting and happening. Some of this is a passion-based teaching experience where teachers are proposing courses that they are excited and interested to teach. And some come out of requests and needs for schools. So part of what we try to do as a collective of schools is support each different school's needs for implementation, that this becomes a conversation that is larger than just about online, but also the culture of a school, the implementation of that partnership between online and campus teaching. So some courses might be part of a larger STEAM initiative. Some might be like Matt, is experiencing even just in this past week, requests for a specific level of language that might have created a schedule conflict. So you'll hear those kinds of conversations, and please feel free to ask those questions too of teachers of why they taught their course and chose to teach these different topic areas, as well as how they've built their partnership with NYSAIS. So in that segue, what I would like to do rather than introduce each person is allow them to be able to introduce themselves, where they teach, what they are doing on their campus, teaching and or other roles, as well as the HLC course or courses they have taught or are teaching, and why they chose or came to us as part of the partnership to teach. Anywhere from interest to my school said I really had to, so wherever that range is. So I know we all have different screens, and so I'll try to kind of navigate that, but if you don't mind, based on my screen going sort of clockwise, I'll start with Dacel. And if you would jump in, Dacel.
Sorry, I had to unmute. My name is Dacel Casey. I teach, or rather work at Trevor Day School. I'm the middle and upper school librarian. I'm also the director of community service and global programs. Sorry, it was a whole list of things I needed to say.
No, that was helpful. And then, so what are you teaching with HLC, and why did you step into that as a journey?
Sure. So I'm teaching a course called Civic Engagement in You, and it's essentially designed as, I feel like it's a social issue, social studies course. We study, every week we have a new topic that we focus on. This week, for example, it's on education around the world and issues relating to that. I feel at my school, at Trevor, we're often able to do a lot of service, but not a lot of service learning. And I feel like high school students, if you give them a platform to learn about something and then speak their voice on it, and then they can go out and volunteer and connect with an issue and organization, it's that much more powerful. So it was really cool that I had kids sign up this time, the last minute. So yeah, this is my first time teaching a course. It was very last minute, so it was pretty exciting. Yes.
That's great. And part of what we can, share and talk about too. I mean, in that same way, I think some of you had experiences where you worked up towards building a course and knew it was running, and some where the interest came at that last minute and being able to then jump in and have the flexibility to run it. So thank you. So going around my screen, then Matt Davison, you're next on my round.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Very well.
Great, okay. Yeah, my name is Matt Davison, and I teach at Friends Academy. It's a private Quaker school on Long Island, the North Shore of Long Island. I teach all levels of Latin, 9th through 12th grade. I also do things like the academic team, trivia, which is a lot of fun. And right now I'm teaching the Latin 1 course, and it looks like I'll be teaching a Latin 3 course with the student coming up, still working on that. How I got involved with HLC, our school wanted to join HLC, and I've become very interested the past 5 years in technology in the classroom, and I already use a lot of technological tools. So I think my school thought I'd be a good person to work with HLC and be the first one to kind of do a course for them. So.
Super, thank you.
Sure.
And then Jesse, Pasca.
Hi, I'm Jesse Pasca. I teach at Friends Seminary. I teach studio art classes, art history, curation, architecture, and with HLC, I'm in my second year teaching a pop to present class. So it's one of my classes that are part of a sequence that doesn't have to follow an order. In art history, I teach 4 different semesters at Friends, and I usually have the most enrollment with pop to present there because it's most contemporary. And one of the things that, later on we can talk about, some tweaks in the second year have been on my mind and how I've adjusted. And yeah, it's been great. And it's also affecting kind of how I think of possibilities at our school.
Super, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Did I miss something?
Nope, I think that was helpful. And then Tegan.
Hi, I'm Tegan. My webcam has been problematic for me today, so I'm sorry you can't see me. But I teach at the Hewitt School, which is on the Upper East Side in Manhattan. I teach upper school science, and for HLC I teach animal behavior, which I ran last fall, and I'm hoping to be able to run it again in the spring. And similar to Jesse, there was a lot of things from the first year running it that I intend to change and pretty radically revise it based on what I learned from teaching online my first time. So I'm happy to speak more to that later.
Super, thanks. And then Chris Mullis, not to pass you over as part of our team and absolutely integral in the relationships and working with all of these, our teachers, but also on the classes together.
I am Chris Mullis, and I'm the person at HLC who you email at 3 a.m. when your students can't log on to our system. And I've been working with Matt, Jesse, Dacel, and Tegan for, in some cases, a few years now. And been a real privilege to support them in getting their classes online and work through some of those issues. It's just been a fun, exciting group to be a part of.
And so much more than the 3 a.m. email, but thank you for your always humorous deference. But he, as all the teachers can share and say, is really wonderful too. I hope you feel that he is a really great workshopping soundboard. And what we hope for teachers is an experience that is similar, like student to teacher, where we want that collaborative workshopping, a sounding board, a place to say, you know, what's your experience in this? If I have this idea, how would that work? So that's a piece of that. So if we can, what we're hoping to do is spend part of the time, I'll ask a few framing questions so that the teachers can share some of their experiences, their classes, and comparisons in teaching with HLC online, but also on campus, how that's impacted their campus teaching, if it has, those kinds of conversations, and then also save a good amount of time for general conversation. However, please do not let that keep you from interjecting questions at any time, because what we really value is the capacity for conversation. So we're trying to help set the stage so you know each of us better and know the faculty and their classes and their experience, but wherever this conversation can and could go with your interest and what you want to be able to learn from having us all together is what we want to be able to happen. So with the first framing piece of this, one of the things that I think teachers come to this journey with is, how will this really be different than teaching on campus? There's some preset expectations. Maybe they've taught online before. Maybe they have a perception of learning online. And so what have been some of those differences in teaching online, specifically with HLC, and then teaching in your classrooms on campus? But also, I think sometimes the piece that we don't as much look at is also the similarity side of it. What has been different, but also what has been interestingly similar with teaching on campus. So some reflection or conversation around that would be helpful. And at this point, I'll just open it up for, rather than kind of calling around.
I'll pop in.
Great.
While walking home today, thinking about these framing questions, I had the opportunity at one point to teach in a multi-age environment. So I have a lot of experience also working with the little kids. And one of the things that I was thinking about is a visual space is generally a fairly static space. And it's kind of like print media, things like that. And a good lower school classroom has containers, it has spaces, it has places where learning takes place, and it's really curated and cultivated and predictable. And one of the things that I was thinking that is advantageous in teaching with the HLC class is that I'm incredibly, very much like a lower school classroom, is that everything is hung and placed and organized and predictable in a way that is really good teaching in a lower school, and perhaps gets a little sloppier in my upper school classes. And so in some ways, it's been a way of thinking about the organizational structure in a very traditional way. Like, I actually think HLC is about as traditional as you can get in that context. And then on the other side is that sort of the dynamic space that we get in our classroom, that is more networked space that can go in any direction through conversation. We have at our disposal, like we do in our classroom, the ability to pull from the web, the pull from text, and we can pull it up almost immediately now. But we also now have people all over the globe or the country, or in my case this semester, all New York City kids, the city. So in some ways, I look at it as HLC allows me to go in both directions, to a container and static, but not in a negative way, and also a very dynamic place.
Yeah, I think I can join in and mention just a couple of differences that I've noticed. One is getting used to the HLC website. It's been a bit of a challenge, just all the different features. In class, I would give kids like a handout and they would turn it into me. But getting used to HLC and having kids assigning quizzes and assigning homework for them to do using the website, bit of an adjustment. Also making my website look pleasing. I know I've worked with Chris on that, making it look aesthetically pleasing. Another challenge that I've had is kind of getting work from kids. I've CC'd Chris in quite a few emails. When I see a kid at school, I can say, you need to turn in these assignments to me, but I can't do that, online with HLC. And so I've had to send a lot of emails to the kids and their liaisons. and people at the school saying, you know, I need this work. And so that's been a bit of an adjustment and challenge for me to get used to.
And I'll jump in there to kind of describe that process, and something that, you know, Chris also didn't give himself credit for, but one of the things that we are value as a collective is that we want to be able to have that relationship with the campus as well, so that the teacher hopefully isn't feeling all by themselves and trying to track down students, so that not only does the teacher let the liaison at the schools know, but is letting Chris know, and then Chris is connecting with the campuses too, so that the campuses help have that community support to say to a student, you know, well, now you're going to be coming in to do this. Why isn't it in? Let's add the extra layer of communication. And, you know, in the same way that works well on campus, that's hopefully more times than not works well. And then, you know, there's still some of the layer of trying to have that tracking down without the proximity piece.
Yeah, and Chris was helping me with grades this week. So, and the grades are much lower than they should be just because kids aren't turning in work. So, which is kind of frustrating as a teacher. So.
I'm sorry. That's all you say. You talk.
I feel like I have the exact opposite issue. My kids turn in all the work. My issue is with the live classes. All of my lessons and stuff that we discuss is all reflection based. So when we get to the live classes, they'll do great on the discussion board. They'll do great on all the assignments, but we get to live classes and it's like crickets. They don't want to talk. They're shy. They don't want to say anything, even though they go to the same school and they know each other. And I just feel like with the online class, the challenge for me was, well, how do I make it interesting? And Chris gave me a really good idea about having them each lead a live class, which has worked really well for us. Yeah, and also I think it's pretty cool that my kids are in Maui and Miami. When we then talk about issues, we can talk about the issues in New York, the issues in Miami, and the issues in Maui. That's really cool for my class, but I don't have, you know, it's all reflection based. The live class can be very awkward sometimes.
It's interesting. I think a lot of us have, I'm guessing, a lot of us have probably either taught or taken online courses at the tertiary level at some point. And for some of us, probably in the earlier days of online. And it can be a very isolating, sink or swim kind of process where you're a student in a university online course and you have, here's your work and you do it or you don't, and that's all there is to it. And I think, in a way, both what Matt and Dacel were getting at is the challenge of creating those sorts of personal relationships and in-person interactions and webs of social connections and networks that we depend on campus, translating those into a hybrid environment such that, you know, one of Matt's students doesn't turn in an assignment, and within 24 hours, I know about it, and the on-campus liaison knows about it, and the on-campus liaison talked to the kid's parent when the kid's parent picked him up from school, and that kid turns that work in because exactly the same thing happened that would happen on your campus. And sort of in the same way, Dacel trying to navigate that, those sorts of personal connections and deep, intimate interactions that we expect when we're speaking face to face, translating that into the Zoom call where we're meeting live, and sometimes takes new ways of thinking about, well, how do those interactions happen, and how do I get kids to care? And I'm warning you right now, as the weather gets worse and worse, you're going to hate your kids in Maui when they start meeting live and it's miserable in New York and you see the blue skies and beaches behind them, because I have been there and it is really hard.
I do it first thing in their morning, so, you know, they meet in their bedroom, so it's okay.
Yeah, those Maui kids deliberately would meet outside just to rile me up.
Just, I think we can kind of circle back around to some of that, but I also was wondering if Tegan, it's hard to tell without your camera. Are you still on in a way that you could also share a little bit about some of those similarities and differences?
Yeah. Sorry, I know you can't see me, so it's a little bit difficult. I think I was just going to echo a lot of what was said, in that it can be pretty difficult to build relationships with the students. And I think that that plays into a lot of accountability. I see this, I also serve as the liaison for my school, and I see this in a lot of ways as the liaison and having to provide that extra support for students to make sure that they're following through with their HLC courses. But in some ways, I think that's more similar than it is different from any course. I think from teaching on campus, we can know just how important relationships are. So in some ways, HLC is the exception that proves the rule, which helps us know that that has to be a priority, I think, within the first few weeks of any HLC course, is managing that relationship.
That's helpful.
I wanted to just say the other side can happen too, and right now I'm enjoying it, but it also is problematic. Perhaps I have one student who I post usually like Sunday night, and the work for the week is done by like Monday, and it's actually really good. I think they're just so into it. I get 6 or 7 drafts of an essay, and it's really improving. Like, so it can happen that way. I think if everybody was doing that, I would have to limit that enthusiasm as well. So I think it can work both ways. And then I also just think that the nature of not getting things handed in is tough, because you're trying to get them to show up to like echo what you want them to show up in that synchronous meeting excited and present. And if they are like haven't handed something in, if you've given them a 0, like you don't have the sort of human time individually outside of that synchronous time to kind of create that calibration to make it okay. So I think it's a strange feeling as a grader and as an assessor, and trying to have the students have success. So.
Yeah, and I think with foreign language and math, it's very important just because the knowledge builds upon itself. So if the kids are behind by like 2 weeks, that could be a big problem, if they fall behind and they have trouble catching up, because, they need to know certain things by certain points to be able to understand the language and get the grammar. So
one of the things that I saw that Eric popped up as a question was, what are some of the things that you have found either through experience or HLC shared as far as from other teachers' perspectives and experiences that do help build those relationships? We've seen teachers and students have that kind of robust conversation online, be it synchronous and or asynchronous, or like Matt, you sat in the student panel and saw students, recognizing each other on screen and in the room, and like, hey, I didn't know you were going to be on, and having this sense of connectedness. So as you're journeying through that, what are you finding as far as tools to support and keep building that? Because I appreciated Tegan saying that that's still, at the forefront of what we're trying to, navigate, that we recognize we have this distance. We're coming from the luxury of campuses where we have the proximity, and that we value that proximity. So as we navigate the environments that don't have that as the luxury and the given, but we still want the relationships, what are some of the pieces that have helped or are helping or you plan to do in that whole range of where you are in your teaching online so far?
I think one of the things that surprised me was how organic class felt. I thought it would take longer for class to feel natural and organic, like the classes I teach on campus. But I feel like after the first couple of weeks, when students got comfortable with each other, it felt like a normal class that I would teach at my school. I could use the same websites that I use in my classroom and have the same kind of discussions and conversations. It felt like a normal class. And I thought it would take longer to get that feeling, but it was great that it happened, pretty quickly.
There's 2 things I think of that are a little different. Like I haven't really tweaked very much, but I offered it. And especially in the second year teaching the same class, I really asked students what type of modalities they want to learn things in. There's sometimes I can deliver content with a lot more reading for students that really want to read well. I got feedback from one of my foreign students last year that they actually can translate and to work with reading much better than some of the dialogues. And so they asked for more readings. And so I was thinking about that, and I have a lot of flexibility sometimes, whether I do video, images, reflections, like more formal writing, giving them reading. So I asked for them the modalities they felt more comfortable in. It really is very similar to what I had set up. So I really didn't do much change, but I can individually, moving forward, actually give different assignments for different kids in a week. And with some of my lessons, especially after they've handed in an ARC for an essay, I will make their lesson for the week. I don't give one lesson. I'll give much shorter lessons tailored to each kid. And I'll take them through their outline and possible works to think about and artists to think about. And in that sense, it's pretty cool. They get a little bit shorter lesson to look at, but it is personalized. And I think it helps.
I would say sort of related to that, that the more student-centered the class is, the easier it is to build that relationship, and that you're just organically giving a lot of feedback and building off of the students' learning. And I would say I didn't do a great job of that with the day-to-day in my first year of teaching online, but I did assign a project that I think generated a lot of motivation for the students because it connected to their everyday life. So they had to investigate the relevance of animal behavior in a human profession. So I had a girl investigate her mother's practice as an acupuncturist and how animals will self-medicate. And then I had another student look at, she did a lot of, like, her dad owned a CrossFit gym, so she's very interested in play as a way of building sort of like physical capabilities related to hunting. And having one-on-one sessions with those kids is when I learned a ton about who they are, their families, and I got to give them really authentic feedback and see them grow, and it became really wonderful to have that dialogue with them. So I think the more that we're sort of just already doing the best practices of education, in which we're creating a student-centered classroom, we're creating learning experiences that are really exciting and motivating for the kids, the more we're going to organically build those relationships as well.
Super. And Chris, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but in the same way, I think that you also had, and we, haven't done any screen sharing. We can drop into that after questions too, if that's helpful. But you've done a really great job modeling and doing that with projects in your classes, because you also didn't mention he teaches too, but that are very student-centered experiences. And I appreciated, Jesse, what you were saying as far as the capacity to differentiate, that often I think from my perspective in watching, supporting, sharing, and choosing this as an endeavor to launch, is that many people feel like online learning is a static model, because there's this front loading and building that happens, that then perhaps you won't be able to veer from that, and it has to carry forward that process. And we are very appreciative of faculty knowing and coming from perspectives that they're already in responsive environments, and that they don't want their classes to be static in that way. We don't want them to be static in that way. We don't want to lose that capacity to have them be responsive to the differentiation that's needed for student learning, but also then in the kinds of projects that would be more individualized and student-centered, so that the students are driving some of that learning, like Tegan was talking about, or like Chris did with having students as teachers choosing the topics and leading different weeks, a thing that he did in one of his classes. So I think I'll ask, we're kind of coming up to time that I'll ask one more question, but then we can also jump in with questions. But in hearing these challenges, similarities, different experiences in that same kind of shift, then what do you see that maybe you have used, be it a tool, a pedagogy, mindset, approach, design, that was maybe something you carried back into your classroom? You know, we've had feedback from people who've talked about the way that they used something like discussion threads and how that changed what they were doing, or used Zoom and how that changed what they're doing in their classroom, or helped support something that they already were wanting to do, but it was not something they'd triggered yet to do differently in their classroom, and they felt that that was a shift. Something like that is a conversation.
For me, it's easy, playposit.com. I was actually introduced to PlayPosit at the HLC conference in Florida, and I loved it, and actually made a lot of things over the summer. And so I started using those in my classroom along with HLC simultaneously. And my students have, really like it a lot. And I like the fact that they can redo the quiz if they struggle, reset it. So PlayPosit has been like a huge game changer for me, and I really love teaching Latin grammar that way. So that's a tool that I really took away.
Awesome. And it's like, oh, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask, Matt, it may be that not everyone here is familiar with PlayPosit. If you have the 30-second elevator, and I understand you're not receiving any funds from PlayPosit to do this, but if you have the 30-second elevator pitch of what it is and what it's good for.
Yeah, it's actually, so you can record videos. You can also take YouTube videos. So you can take a short YouTube video or make your own video with a website like Screencast-O-Matic. And let's say you make a 5-minute video. What's cool is you can pause the video and ask questions. So you can stop like 2 minutes in and ask the student a question, multiple choice, free response, and they have to answer. And you can also set it so they can rewind and fast forward, and also so that they can take the quiz again. So I just find it a really great tool. It's also great for differentiated instruction because students can work at their own pace. So, one student could finish the video like that. Another student could take twice as long, and both are okay. So yeah, it's just a really cool tool, especially for teaching foreign language grammar. It's really very helpful.
And if I may jump in, a feature that I'm just starting to wrap my head around how to use, but you can, the questions based on the student's answer, you can jump to a different point in the video or a different video entirely. So I'm starting to put together explanatory videos, sort of teaching videos where, hey, first time GDP per capita comes up in this video, a question pops up to gauge, do you understand what we're talking about? I'm not testing you because I want to take points off. You get that question wrong, we jump to another 2-minute video that explains, here's what GDP per capita is. Did you get a question? Did you get it? Do you need another explanation? And then we jump back to the main thread, such that the video sort of expands out and then contracts like a spider web, and students can actually follow their individual paths through this process depending on the knowledge they brought in.
That feature, but yeah, that'd be really cool. Yeah.
I'm just wrapping my head around how to put those together and use it right now, but it has a lot of potential, and you can also get students to create those videos for you.
Yeah, someone mentioned it's like Edpuzzle. Nice thing is that you can keep your videos private. I think Edpuzzle makes everything public. So you can choose with PlayPosit to keep your videos private if you don't want to share them with the world.
I'm not sure what the back end of Edpuzzle looks like. I haven't used it too much, but you get a lot of data from PlayPosit out the other end, which can be really useful. Like, how much time did a student spend on this video? Where did they pause it? Where did they go back? And that can be really useful to set yourself up for the live class, so that I know, like, oh, what did people have trouble with? What do we need to really talk through? Oh, no, okay, Edpuzzle may have some of those features too.
Yeah. So if you're comfortable with Edpuzzle, you could keep using that, but PlayPosit I like.
Yeah, I'm not particularly married to the specifics of PlayPosit, but I think that style of interacting, rather than a passive video where I'm going to talk at you for 10 minutes, I'm very excited about.
Yeah, me too.
I wanted to jump in and share something in terms of thinking about what we do with HLC and trying to imagine possibilities back at school. I think that was the sort of seed of your question. One of the things that I love is collaboration and to connect with other colleagues. And if our school, collaboration is almost impossible from a scheduling standpoint, and either with teachers and students. what ended up happening, I see if I can share this. Safari. I might have to pull this one up because I restarted it. Let me see if I have it here. Power School. I'm going to log in. I don't know if you can see this. Is this coming up?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So I'm going to go. So we created, so I'm working with, all right, I'll give Samsara threads. So one of the things that I decided to do in collaboration with some history teachers is that every 9th grade history student, so there's 85 of them, and then my basically seniors who are taking sacred and art, we're collaborating. And what we did is we found a real commonality in that the 9th grade history team really wanted students to be able to read visual evidence. And in my class, where we've been reading Beauty and Being Just by Elaine Scarry. We've been talking about the sacred and as beauty as a possible way in for social justice. And there was enough there that we began to say, okay, let's see what we can do. And we all watched this movie Samsara, and by Ron Frick and Mark Magnuson. And it's a really wonderful film. And what ended up happening is my seniors kind of watched it first. They developed some threads that were interesting for them. And then the 9th graders have looked at it. And so now, wow, look at that, 10 new comments there. And what it allows is the 9th graders to be able to connect with our upper, really upperclassmen, and they're teaching it now. We're obviously moderating it a little, monitoring it, but they're moderating it. And what's going to happen, I'm sorry, it's taking a bit, but what's going to happen is every student, all 100 of our students are going out to different museums in the city. We've given them a list of works basically to go look at. They can go all over the place and they have a lot of choices. Then what's going to happen is based on their poll there, they're going to have different Zoom meetings. We're going to assign groups, and one of the seniors is going to have 6 of the 9th graders and winnow down to a theme that the upper schoolers are going to create a bibliography for, and then everything's going to go into VoiceThread presentations around that theme with some of the real research work rooted in the history. So, all right. It's a lot of information.
So, so as you're kind of sharing and talking about that though, Jesse, like some of what you have done, that's the back and forth between campus and online, like I think your reflection on the way that you use quality of failure and that's been interesting. What you're doing here with museum visits, you also are doing in your online classes and driving students, like pushing them out into the community and museums, right? So like I think the part of what's exciting to hear about that is that hopefully there's this ebb and flow and integration of what you're doing on campus influences what you're doing online. What you're doing online is influencing what you're doing on campus. And that connectedness is what we're finding interesting, certainly, to learn from and watch.
I just one last thing. One of the things that I think is, because it doesn't seem as direct as I think, Sarah, you're trying to help me make it direct, like the enthusiasm where you can differentiate for students and to create experiences. Then you come into your classroom and your school and you see possibilities. And I think it's some of the open playground of the online learning that allows to imagine those possibilities and then to learn the tools. Like VoiceThread is something I hadn't used with HLC, and that gives me a presentation tool that can integrate and unify the classes. So I was sharing that almost nuts and boltsy just because it makes it visible how I got excited about the possibility.
Yeah, to pick up, I'm sorry. To pick up on what Jesse said, I actually taught Play Posit at end of year meetings to my other faculty members. So it's kind of cool to be able to pay it forward like that. And a bunch of teachers were really excited about the tool and said, oh, I can see how I could use this in art. I could see how I can use this in math. So this is, for me as a teacher, it's really exciting to be able to share like that and influence other teachers.
I just had a question, and I'm definitely going to look into Play Posit for sure. So you've sold me. But Jesse, I had a question about what you just showed us, which is just a fabulous thing. It's amazing. Who has access to that, and what is the sort of platform that it exists on? That was a little confusing to me.
And one of the things that hearing Matt talk about the where to do everything, I didn't have that because we use Haiku or Power Learning, which is the same LMS that HLC uses. So in that sense, it's fairly native, at least at this point, native being 3 years, or 4 years. But in this day and age, that's a long time. And so that class is whoever we want to. So for example, my chair, Madeline, who's watching, if she wants to be on that and is excited about it, I can add her. And so she could just drop in and watch it. But really it's the 4 teachers and all of our students have that class. But I can share anybody, if they want to look at it, I can just add an email.
Okay, yes, I understand. And I should out myself as not yet enrolled with this HLC. We're just starting out in our school with blended and online learning type courses. So we wanted to learn more. Thank you.
And that doesn't have to be an outing at all. What we're hoping is that this is that kind of conversation that shares just the people having that experience of teaching online, blending, that it's carrying that forward no matter under what kind of umbrella that is happening. We just are happy to have had a collectiveness that is supporting each other, because I do think that it is challenging to singularly as an institution be navigating that and learning those things and finding ways that you'll implement on campus. And quite frankly, some of what Dacel referenced is kind of the collective sustainability too. When you're trying to launch different classes for different reasons, what we have found an interesting, not only breadth of offerings from teachers, but sustainability of having different students from different schools. And we think that's from an authentic perspective of wanting to hear these different places, geographies, and perspectives and ideas, but it also creates a collective capacity. But that doesn't, by any means define every school's journey or the way that they will be implementing it in online.
I was going to say, Elizabeth, I'm right down the street from you. You're the Portledge on Long Island, right? So we're right. Yeah, we're neighbors. So I'd be happy to work with you or help you.
That's great, and I'm sure we're both fans of Polly Duke. So
yes, Polly. Yeah, go Polly.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'd be happy to work with you. Yeah, we're right down the street, neighbors.
Great, that's wonderful, Matt. Thanks.
We're getting closer to the end of time, and in some ways we've had some questions that have come in conversation, but also on the chat. But I would love for opportunity for just more direct questions even. For any of the teachers?
Well, I'll throw one out to everybody experienced here. It also will help clarify for me how this some of these courses may work. I'm wondering, you were talking about, Jesse was talking about how he can sort of customize things, and he has some autonomy in the curriculum, it sounds like. And so I'm wondering about that. How much of what you're offering is predetermined by HLC, I suppose?
I'm happy to answer that, but I'd also ask that, I was going to say, I hope that you jump
We're
in.
independent school teachers, and these are our classes, and we're excited about them. And so, I mean, I want to take Tegan's class. That just sounds amazing. And
it is.
So I think that's what we want from, like, hearing her talk about it. I want to take that class. And so I think that's what we try to do. And our pitch has to work for HLC to think it's good too. But, hopefully we have a class that's really awesome and we do it.
Yeah, I've had complete autonomy with my curriculum. Whenever Chris suggests something to me, it's always about, the way the website looks or structuring the website. He's never said anything to me though about changing like my curriculum or, so I choose the textbook I use. I choose the assignments I want to give the students, the way my assessments look, like everything is up to me. So, and I love that freedom.
I very rarely correct Matt's Latin grammar. I
can try if you want.
I think we have tried to, as one of the people involved sort of in the professional development in HLC and working with teachers on courses, I think we've tried to walk a line between partner schools have certain expectations about what a course should involve and what their students are doing. And we've tried to develop some very broad best practices and ideas about a house style, and hopefully some deep and directed ideas about what happens in a class, but also provide a lot of room for teachers to experiment and play and develop. And I think a lot of what we sort of refer to as our house style now are just sort of accretions of different things teachers have tried over the years and done. I think sometimes I probably lean too far to the side of freedom and autonomy. And I think sometimes when I'm working with a teacher, what they really want to say is, look, just tell me what to do. But each class is so specific to the content and the personality of the teacher who's creating it. And frankly, the students who happen to show up this particular semester, that we really do have to, we have to leave a great deal up to the judgment of the teacher who's the content expert and where they want to take the class and how those interactions with their students work out. And you know, I don't think I've worked with a teacher yet who ended up at the end of the semester quite where they thought they would be when they set out, or where I thought they would be. And that's, you know, that's what makes it exciting and rewarding and frustrating, and you know, why I keep coming back.
Thank you.
I have a question. For those who have done this a while, how did your teaching day change from before your involvement until now? What was a surprise? What's better? What was a surprise and an oops?
I guess I can jump in. Being a new to this, just allowing for time in the day to grade things and, you know, check the website. I had to check the HLC website a lot just to make sure that students turn in work. So it kind of feels like you have an extra class, you know, where you're taking care of assignments, assessments, and gradebook. So, you know, that's been like an additional responsibility. Also scheduling the live class once a week. I do it in the evening. I guess a lot of teachers do it in the evening, you know, and there are days where you feel really tired and you're like, you know, my work day's over and I've got to, you know, get some more energy and, you know, some more pep to deal with the students. So I'd say it's just like teaching another class. Like you kind of feel like, you know, you have to make room in your life and room in your schedule for teaching another class and dealing with the same work kind of things that you deal with during the day.
I'll just say that one thing that I knew it would be a lot to launch a class, but it's massively more than that. And I, you know, like I would love to offer other art history classes, and I'm just like, maybe if I chunk it out like a couple of weeks of prep for a couple of years in a row, you know, during the summers, and I'll be ready to launch another one. But it's just, I'm too old at this stage for me to be like, I'm going to give up a month of pure planning to have it be the way I want it to. Otherwise, right? Otherwise, you can do it, like build a couple of weeks and go, but then you're going to be so cramped, in my opinion, during if you have a full load at school. I mean, you can do it, but it will require like a lot of recovery and restoration. So I do think that I'm not trying to knock it. It's just, you have to go in with your eyes open, in my opinion.
Yeah, it takes time to structure your webpage. So that's something I do on the weekends. You know, I'll do like Saturday or Sunday. I have to like allot time to organize my webpage for the next week. And that's something I don't do, you know, deal with really as, you know, a campus teacher. So that takes time too, to make your webpage look good and put everything up on the webpage that students will need for the following week.
There's kind of a blessing and a curse aspect to it. And this is HLC and other, prior online work I've done before that. And the blessing is you have this kind of flexibility, and your students do too, to schedule the work you're doing, with far more flexibility and far more freely than you otherwise would. And the curse is that you need to become very good about setting some kind of personal boundaries for yourself so that you get to have a personal life, because students and for me, teachers, email all during the day and all during the night. And as a teacher and as a PD support, like, I want to be available to them and I want to be present with them. And it's part of the joy of it is, when I get the weird student email at 2 a.m. that makes me burst out laughing because they're great kids, but also, learning to set, and I think this applies when you're in the classroom as well, but it's maybe more extreme for us, learning to set those boundaries such that I can say, this is a healthy blend of, I'm working with you during these hours, and then, after whenever it is, I'm off the clock and I'm not going to respond, and I'm not going, I'll be back at 8 a.m. tomorrow, and that's when we'll deal with this. I think that's a balance that we all have to find, because it's not the regular hours, and we all learn to find a blend in our own lives that works for us, or I hope we do.
Jesse could probably speak to this, but I think it's hard teaching the class for the first time, just because you're creating everything anew. I imagine next year, like when I teach Latin 1, I'll have the web pages and I can just, fiddle with what I've done. But now I'm creating every week as new, and I think that makes it a bit tougher. So,
well, we would face a challenge like that no matter what, whether we're in school or whether we're online. Whenever we are given a new assignment, it does take that extra effort.
Absolutely.
But it's an interesting challenge, though, to make that balance, that I'm here for you, but I do need to sleep and eat.
Dacel, was there something you were going to say too?
Sorry, no, I was just going to add that I felt like, because I developed the bulk of my course over the spring in preparation for doing a summer, and then it didn't happen. And then when it happened for the fall, it was like, awesome, I'm halfway there. But I also then found me changing stuff halfway through, like anyone does when they're teaching a class. But I also feel an added level of, I want my stuff on the page to be so amazing, because I'm not with them in class on a day-to-day basis. So I find I'll make the page and then I'll constantly change it throughout the week, just to make sure, like, that video that I show them from PBS about immigration is really going to hit them hard, and they're not going to forget about it. So, and not saying I wouldn't put that energy into the classes I teach on campus, but I feel like I put more energy into making this class like that wow factor for the kids, because I'm not in front of them.